get into our main presentation with Dan Whitmore and Monty Paulson. Thank you guys for being here so much. These guys, if you don't know, they have been working on Patch House building for quite a long time. A lot of projects, and I think Monty's been working in Canada, probably a lot of Vancouver projects. I know you've been involved heavily in Patch House Canada, the organization up there as well, which has been a lot of great work. And Dan has been leading the way in a lot of Patch House builder training programs. In fact, is anybody here taking the builder training this week? In Newman? All right. Well, Dan is here to teach that course. So we're really thrilled to have you guys here for tonight's presentation. Thank you. And I'll just turn it right over to you, and I'll waste any more time.
We're going to tag team with Monty. I would be so excited about 3,000 bucks a unit. We have some of the most aggressive house targets in Vancouver. The city is doing more than 10 million square feet of house and RDH we're doing about half of that, about 5 million square feet of house in the city of Vancouver, and we don't have anything near $3,000. That's so stellar. And that's so great. Real quick, RDH, the company we're both with, does a lot of things. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it tonight. I want to cover a lot of ground. I'm a certified house consultant and a certifier in PHI system. I personally worked on more than 70 projects, trained more than 200 CHPC. Sorry, just up here. I'm a co-founder of PassPass Canada, involved in the Certifier Circle in North America, and very involved in PassPass Institute in Darmstadt.
I am a consultant and a builder, and I've been Bonnie and I jumped into the deep end of the pond about the same time, 10+ years ago. I come from the builder side, so I've spent a lot of time building projects, consulting on them, but I've done 6 projects. I've worked on a bunch of other ones, and now I'm doing the consulting side. I provided the joint Monty at RDH about 2 years ago, and then as I said, I developed the BS builder training and been teaching that for 8 years now. And if anybody wants to get away from this bad weather and go to another place where there's similar weather, next month, the PassPass Northwest, for that, we're having our annual conference. It's a really good conference. And then I'm also on the BS board.
And I want to be really clear about this. Dan is on the BS board. I have a long relationship with PassPass Institute. We are in a climate emergency. Most of our cities are in a health emergency. I don't care what kind of PassPass is. This is our agenda. Slides. It'd be great if we get through them, but if we don't, just get sidetracked on the great inspection method. So I'm going to talk about one of the first multi-unit projects I did. One's going to talk about a much larger early project down in Oregon. What kind of work in sequence and in larger projects. We're going to try to show you details of finished buildings, talk about what worked, talk about the mistakes we made, so you don't have to make the same mistakes. So first multi-unit I did was in a beautiful place called Bella Bella, British Columbia. The town's so nice they named it twice. It's the home of the Helsik First Nation. The Helsik do not consider it ceded territory to the nation of Canada. They consider themselves an independent nation. And for all reasonable functions, they behave that way. You have to go to the Helsik tribal band the way you go to a city for approval. It's a place where you see bears, white glacier bears crawling in trees, where you see whales leaping out of the water. And we figured if bears can fly, if whales can fly, why shouldn't Pasadena fly? This project began when another modular project was housing for the small hospital there burned, and they issued an RFP for 6 2-bedroom units, certified PassPass, 6-month delivery. I literally got a call over Christmas break saying, okay, clock's ticking, about less than 6 months. We put together a great team fairly quickly, and this job, more than anything else, proved that PassPass is a team sport. In some way, it was easier than some of the projects finished later, because we had to work fast and we couldn't double think everything. We had to fit on the existing site. We developed a modular format of 6 European-style row houses. Really simple layouts, kitchen near the back, living room in the front, 2 bedrooms upstairs. Nothing. The mechanical room was actually left over from the old building, so we're going to slide into that. We began building modules in a factory in Agassiz, BC, which is a suburb of Vancouver. We had had to do shredding string in the factory on the fly. It was great. The module's built kind of like this. We had a double floor with the joists running in opposite ways, each filled with insulation. We built walls on platforms. These are typical 2x6 frame walls. Put them on, dropped them in the factory, screwed them together, screwed the roofs on. They wire from the outside. They insulate from the outside. They put on the plywood sheeting. At this point, it's pretty normal 2x6 platform construction. Probably larger projects we've done. We then add a vapor open peel and stick barrier with a tremendous amount of detail around the air tightness on that barrier all the way through. And then 2 layers of rock wool. 6 inches of rock wool. So at the core of this is just a normal 2x6 platform building with 6 inches of rock wool like a big sweater around the outside. The detailing, an awful lot was done in the factory because the First Nation, one thing they asked for the project is don't bring a bunch of single white guys to town for months and months on end. That's not going well for us. Get in, do your work, and get out was their respectful request. So we challenged ourselves in how much detailing we could prepare in the factory and how little time we could spend on site. Over the rock wool came the rain screen barrier, drainage. This is an extremely wet location. When it rains in Bella Bella, which is about 240 days a year, it rains sideways. 13 miles of water out here. So again, 6 inches on the outside, metal siding at the request of the design spec. And on the inside, drywall, we prepared a HRV system. I'm sure you're all familiar with this under 200. The go-to HRV for a lot of simple projects. Every unit has its own on the stair landing. We did air tightness testing in the factory and on the field, so we could have a sense when modules left the factory, they were going to add up to sufficient air tightness. My kids say this is the only photo of me actually working. Probably the biggest cost savings on the project was all of the interior pieces, the furniture, the TV, the appliances, the dishes were shipped to the location in the units, saving a huge amount of substitution. This more than offset when that's us bringing these out of It's not glamorous, that's true. So they all went on barges down the Fraser River, up the coast. It's about 1,200 kilometers by sea. Meanwhile, we're working in the factory. The old building was demolished by the core contractor who specializes in remote construction, and a new foundation was created just outside the old one. Late in the process, the Canadian federal government came along and said, oh, because of climate change, we want you to raise the building an extra meter. So we actually built, you see there's a meter rise on top of the concrete foundation, a wooden additional foundation. So this is a cold but ventilated crawl space with a central services gate. So all the services come through this heated chamber in the middle. That's the primary dock. It's a pretty nice place to work. The barge came up to the edge of the breakwater. Units came down, set up a crane on site, dropped units in one by one. As with most modular, there's a little interstitial space between, and so we had to keep both the air tightness and insulation continuous across the units. So this insulation goes between units, and the next box presses up against it. Unit by unit. It so happened as we got base on this huge rainstorm came through. We had to sort of retard and stop assembly for about a day. These straps create continuous support across the units. I didn't notice, but the straps are cut off onto projects. An awful lot of sealing, so when the unit comes down from the top, you have a perfect air seal with the unit bottom. So continuing that air seal continuity between the upper layer and the bottom layer was fairly important. Not a tremendous amount of money, but important to make sure that every chase was caught through the process. Top units go on together. Then it's just a matter of doing those connections between the two units. The architects did a really nice job of coming up with a sequence where we sort of put in a plywood strip here, screw it in, first layer of rock wool, second layer of rock wool, and then this metal connection plate that could actually absorb up to about 3/4 to an inch of clay if these boxes weren't stacked perfectly. You can see where those units can connect. You can see the accent ports for the HRVs there. We got away with a really simple door sill. We used the exact same window sill here as for the door, but we cantilevered the access port. Again, we're trying to do things simple cheap, fast, peaceful process. When it was all done, it was pretty typical fit and finish for worker housing. It's worker housing, 6 units for the hospital. It's the only hospital for approximately 600 kilometers in any direction. So it's an important rural site for whatever happens. That's the picture of it finished. Some things we learned. Stack boxes make great form factor. Trying to manage your form factor in passive house, like we always are, because that's how we control costs. Building out of boxes is a great idea. Factory production requires really detailed drawings. Passive house. Every station in the factory has a specific drawing and a list of what they had to do at their station before the new rolls to the next station. That is great for passive house detailing. The reduced labor on site in a remote village like this, where you're having people basically stay, do it. More than offset the passive house cost. Like you're more in the factory where it's more like 35, 40 bucks an hour than 180 bucks an hour. Huge savings, just and the project is replicable. We have built this exact same building twice more already. Same set of plans. Obviously, the factory is willing to sell the second and third one for even less because they've worked out their development costs. Just pull out their plans and build another one. We changed the air barrier slightly on this one, did it all on the outside rather than tweaking it as well, lowering costs further. This building, for a whole bunch of reasons, including the fact that it was not so rural, was almost half the cost of the previous building. And there's a third one that's being built this summer as well. The other thing we learned is that we could design the buildings differently and save money. So these buildings were 6 two-bedroom units in 12 boxes. Came up with another design here where we do 4 two-bedroom units in 4 boxes. At the end of the day, modular costs are about the number of boxes you got to ship, regardless of the size and complexity of boxes. So these units are about 2/3 of the cost of real units. They're not quite as glamorous, they're not quite as perfect, but in terms of really affordable remote site housing, that's all passive house. Kind of felt like we're making movements forward. We're continuing to work with this company. It's Metric Modular projects across both communities in Western Canada using this modular. But does it work? Are we doing passive house just for the fun of it, or do we want to do it? So what's interesting about this is we had the same tenants. The people literally burned down the buildings, moved out to other places, and the exact same people moved into new buildings. When do you ever get that? You know? So the new building uses less than half the energy of the old building. And it's all electric. There's no propane as was the old building. But more interestingly, it's less than 1/10 of the carbon emissions from the old building, the way it comes together. And in British Columbia, our primary pursuit of passive house is based on carbon reduction more than energy. We're happy to say that carbon reduction is going really up. We stuck in monitors in this building, and we've had some Wi-Fi, like everybody else in the world. But what we found is that the heat and cooling loads are performing as designed. In fact, neither the heat and cooling loads are anywhere near. So from a heat perspective, a cooling perspective, we're hitting it completely. We were far more curious of what was happening on that other primary energy or primary energy renewable that we started working on. So we tracked everything. Units. Now, this is preliminary data. We hope to publish this next few months for the full year. It's only 6 months, so take a little bit of grain of salt. But our total EUI for the suites, we actually saw 4 of the 6 suites exceeding the EUI. We're like, why are we over on both of the primary energy project? We'll break it down. So we looked at refrigerator and freezers. Almost all of them were lower than, this is the PHPP standard, this is each one. So it's not refrigerator and freezers. Is it the clothes dryers? Well, one person does a lot of clothes, and that's fine. But overall, the clothes dryers were fine. These are condensing dryers, by the way. Cooking, there's one person who does a lot of cooking. And that's a good thing. Like, we're not in the job of shaming someone for making cookies. You know, that's part of the goal, right? Now, this won't surprise you. The same unit that was high on cooking, also high on dishwashing. And when we went to interview her, she made me cook. Also, she uses a lot of lighting. Lighting's a funny one to track because this circuit tracks the installed lighting, but several people prefer light from a lamp, a floor lamp, or a table lamp. And of course, that counts as plug load, not as lighting. So there's a little bit of tracking error there. But I think she spent a lot of time in her kitchen. But look at this. Here's our plug loads expectation and our higher plug loads. You realize that our plug load defaults, plug load assumptions are way out. Part of it remote community where there is no restaurant, there is no movie theater, you hear 2 minute home, they're home all the time. Part of it is this remote community where you get given lots of free moose and free salmon. So everyone has plugged in free. She has plugged in free. And part of it is that just I think our plug load expectations are not realistic. And as we look at larger buildings, we're going to look at a few minutes, our awareness of what could be happening with plug loads has us down. Dan will tell you, the US program was a different plug load estimate than the international program, probably more appropriate for North America in some ways. And that's something we're looking at closely. Nonetheless, this is a project we're really proud of. It's been really replicable, and that's where we're at. It's not just doing past bus, but we're tired of pilot projects. RDH has been doing awesome net zero pilot projects for 20 years. We're trying to create toolkits that people can replicate project after project.
How many square feet would you?
It's yeah, it's about 80 square meters. Or ballpark. Pretty small.
Any other questions? Fire Mom? We both like questions.
Like loads that they do like promise. People are home all the time.
It's a whole variety of things. So, the highest one in there, in the interview, turned out to be a guy who's training for bicycle race. In this town, it's all gravel road. So what he does is he fires up the mini split, pulls down the thing, puts on a movie on the big screen TV, and pedals like hell for 3 hours. And again, that's a pretty healthy activity for us. Uploads every night. Right? So I think we're in this interesting space where we don't want to discourage people from making an exercise. Those are great activities. Those are activities that work. We do need to look at how we manage expectations around flood loads and how we manage around flood loads. Whether in some units there might be a lot of
But no, we also have to manage expectations and kids.
yeah.
Some of the flood load you're doing research, that's required for me to stay.
Yep.
So if you do flood load, you take that into
We put it in the plan.
That's different than the year where you can't look at tomorrow.
We would if we tried to squeeze it in the unit, but they should be retrofitted. Complete oversight on our part. We were criticized for this quite extensively. And get them.
So, the point though that it absolutely is providing free heat, that's great. Especially in a place like this where it's not a 6 month on, 6 month off, it's a 9 month and a 3 months. So we'll look at, we'll talk about the other projects we're looking at. So that's a unique thing in our region, west coast of North America, or west coast. We have hot months, but it's not humid. And okay, they probably have mosquitoes there, but there's no mosquitoes. You live in a place where there's no way you would not have mosquitoes. There's no way you'd leave the window open. So we live in a place where we've got cooling and discussion that, so we're able to utilize more effectively, I guess I'd say, utilize the flood loads as offsetting space condition needs. But
Here you can keep your house.
we can't. We can for certain months of the year, but do you want to unplug that for all summer long? Well, in Seattle, okay, if you only really want to unplug it for about 4 weeks, 5 weeks. So it's difference, it's a stark difference from other places. So which, and is setting up the program and setting the targets, but the flood loads are a specific one in terms of when you're looking at overheating, and as we migrate past us out of the small buildings and into locations that have more of a cooling concern, that combination is actually pretty significant inside the buildings. So way too much capacity.
You're going to come back to this topic.
Right. Any other questions? Come on. So first off, I'd like to say a huge thank you to my colleague and good friend Mike Steffen, who provided the slides. He's from Wall Street audience and somebody who would talk with him and be private, crying over years, how do we get this done? Because they had a tremendous lift in their project, and it was delivering affordable housing at just enough. There was a small amount of incentive monies for their market. So Walsh Construction does a tremendous amount of affordable housing work in both Washington and Oregon, primarily in the Portland and Seattle metropolitan areas. So this project we're going to look at called Orchards of Orenco. There's 3 phases. It's in the suburban Hillsborough, just outside of Portland. It's a very Intel has their headquarters there. Nike has their headquarters down in that region. So it's a fairly high dollar, high economic climate. And so but the affordable housing needs are tremendous because property values drivers for affordable housing are pretty severe. So this is a specific site in the lower right. So there's reach 1, 2, and 3. Phase 1, 2, and 3. It's literally right on the max trains. So the market rate people don't want to build their buildings on the train tracks, but the affordable housing folks say, great, we got good access. The station right there, suburban location. It's a very much an expanding community. A lot of the West Coast urban areas, it's so awesome to be in Boston, where you had a city 300 years ago. Portland wasn't even a training center for the United Nations. But outside of that, it wasn't there. So this whole community is less than 100. It's adjacent to light rail, workforce housing, and so here's the 3 phases. And quickly go through all. And you'll notice they're all somewhat approximately the same size, but they're 3 very different sort of typologies. So phase 1, this was the one we reached CDC. Anybody see a presentation on this? This was the first large multi-family castle building in North America. It's just like, okay, we can do this. Reach CDC went and toured Europe. They came back from their visit and said, this is what we have to do. And they went out and found an agency that would cover the incremental cost to take their standard project. So this one is 57 units. It's ends up with all the common spaces and meeting spaces, organizational spaces, 57,000 square feet of building. It's completed in 2015. Construction costs, I don't know, and this is 5 years ago, but it was pretty high for the market. That was 5 years ago. This is definitely not today. But per unit, $160,000 per unit for the construction cost. This is not a good software. So, and this is the layout, and very much, but form factor. It's not a dozen boxes stacked on top of each other. A little bit broad, it's a little bit spread out. We got a lot of eastern exposure and western exposure, etc. So that was a challenge for them, but it came in somewhat high design and with a closed slope roof and a penthouse with mechanical on the top, 3 stories, obviously, but slab on grade and exterior parking. But everybody gets parking space. So this is what they ended up with. So our colleague Dylan Lamar did a tremendous job on modeling the building, working extensively, working with Walsh, working with the various subcontractors, and really coming up with this, what a project that met the goals. So what they ended up with was 4 inches of insulation below the slab in a fairly complicated, we have to insulate our foundation systems. So a lot of work went into integrating this fully insulated foundation system. How do we deliver this? So the design is from Anchor Boyson, the markup is from Walsh Construction. But how we take this detail and actually deliver it inside. So a lot of work went into on the front end, massaging the concept into what we're doing. Tremendous development phase. So, and then they went and built it and designed. So, slab on grade, thickened edge slab, monofloor, big area, 2 by 10 wall frame. So wood grows on trees. Got a lot of wood. And it's much cheaper to stick frame a 2 by 10 wall than to wall. And it's actually not. So 2x10 wall frame, very much advanced framing. Walsh has pioneered a lot of the sort of replicable advanced framing techniques to meet energy as well as durability of building walls. So wall construction, not the Walsh that is generally exposed to people. The Walsh construction is only one. And they've done great quality control. So pretty straightforward. Seal sheathing, stick frame, bibs insulation, through-on, air barrier at the rooftop. So, and then an inch and a half of rock wool. There's our rock wool guy. An inch and a half of rock wool on the outside to make sure we're mitigating these moisture concerns in our very wet environment. Fully ventilating cladding. The ventilation even goes past all of your So ventilation goes through all the exterior detailing. We do a lot of really extensive work to make sure we have truly ventilated cladding. On our system, especially our district. So the ventilation gets all the way through all of these et cetera, et cetera. So we got the cladding, your final construction, and just finish building. So 57 units. You know, standard construction schedule, they added maybe 2 weeks to the whole construction. There's a penthouse on the roof there's 3 ERVs for the whole building that is fairly distributed around. So they were just centrally located with trunk lines down below. And yes, there are a bunch of fire dampers. And yes, it was a challenge, but PAE engineering came up with the scheme. And what it allowed for them to do also is, I talked about we don't have really much cooling loads, but Portland actually has approximately the same cooling degree hours as Boston does. Dry bulb. They have dry summers, not hot humid summers. So what the theory is that in this we can put we need part of our heating and cooling load in central ventilation system. So we're dehumidifying the air, that little bit of dehumidification we need, but they're also bringing in tempered airstream all summer long. So it also is taking away. So there is no central air conditioning. There is even no unitized air. Nobody gets an air conditioner from the building. Would that fly here? Not anymore. It's becoming, the affordable housing world is under such pressures that in our neck of the woods that they're like not allowed to put it in.
That's what we used to have.
Yeah. So I suspect in the next 5 years it's going to be this. Because
So he messes up the flood load when he sticks something in the window.
yes, it sure does. So actually, total tangent here, but there's if anybody's, so Walsh has worked with one of the local window vendors to come up with plexiglass unit that goes in the window that has support for a room air. Nobody wants that in the center of the living room very long. So it's perfect. It takes the edge off of the system. It takes it, so it's a unitized air conditioner. They pay $5 a month to rent it. We have a thing that goes in the window so they don't mess up their air sealing, but they get some incremental small amount of air conditioning. It's actually being highly valued. That is our silver bullet. But in this one, this is what more and more people are looking at, putting a little bit of cooling in a semi-centralized ventilation system. So there's a read. There. It's what we do. They put solar blocking screens that are up seasonally. There are overhangs, but there's a big west facade. And what, if you look at the insolation charts, like when the sun is shining in our area, it's shining from July, August, September. That's when we get all of this. Right? So we do overheat, especially in high school.
So this is predicted overheating mitigated by these features or overheating after?
This is this was their strategy to meet the overheating. And then everybody moved in and got the training, like, be sure you open your windows, be sure you close your curtains in the day. And Some people moved in and moved out. Right now, but not many. Most people, especially in the west facade, which is a little more private, but they like the. And again, it's only for apartments. So, and did it work? It worked pretty damn well. They work quite well. In general, the apartments are lower. There's the whole chart, month by month, but this is just the November, December. In general, the apartments are using less than what was modeled, and common spaces are using more. One of the main reasons is because the reheat on the central domestic water system is on the common. So they have a gas boiler feeding, and there's a circulation line, and there's just heat trace tape on these main trunk lines. So they actually determined that it's using a tremendous amount of energy, keeping those central hot water systems. So, well, yeah, basically. It's not, they take it up, it's not circulating at 130 degrees all the time. It's not about 115. Insulate. And so, it actually is working. It's working. So even with those higher loads, it's on what is really, really doing well. So we came up, after this, we came up with a strategy. We're 20 by 2020. So 20 buildings of 20,000 square feet or greater, we all want by 2020. And we're about maybe a quarter of the way. So then they move on, Orchards 2, this is phase 2 of the 3. And they're like, you know what, that was great, but it cost us 11% more than our standard building. And we can't do that second time. We don't have that funding. So let's take all our lessons and build a really good building with what's learned, but not go quite past those levels. And so they, especially for the cost containment, because the cost of construction went up, the market, just more and more pressure. And so got to take some bite out of the budget. They significantly redesigned it. Remember the form factor in that first one? It was pretty. So here we have one greater unit, and we've lost almost 8,000 square feet. How do they do that? They've essentially changed the floor print of the units. So I'll, at the end of the slide deck, you'll see Mike Steffen, after this, has come out with something, something CEDC, cost-effective efficiency construction. And it's basically like, we get the modulation, we get the long buildings, but we can meet it. We can meet the needs of the occupants by changing how much expensive exterior we need. By shrinking the exterior walls, shrinking the hallways, shrinking what the non-usable spaces are in the building, but maintaining the same square footage in the units. So it's a really good white paper. So this one, it went down. So we only have 2 inches of insulation below. They went down to a 2 by 8, 1 inch of rock wool, and then they went from that very expensive close-up roof polyiso down to a couple inches of close-up spray foam that was an air barrier. I have a lot of problems, and cellulose to make an R60. And then the last one, so that's what they. So the last one, sorry. Okay. So we went down a year later. Cost of construction went up. Our unit cost went down. Our square footage price went up, but our price per unit went down. But Reach was really happy. And this one ended up being Pascal certified because PS was changing the standards by which they plug loads and they piloted after standards. So yes, this is the built to the. There were some airtightness challenges on this one. They knocked it out of the park. So they just blasted their airtightness. On this one, they're like, we spent a lot of money on the airtightness, and they had to do a little remediation, but they sequenced it so they could do that work. And then there's phase 3, and phase 3, Reach was like, we spent all we can. We can't put any more money into this. We have to go not just back to their standard, but almost back to code standard. So Reach had a better than code standard. They couldn't even do that because of the commands. Also, these are bigger units, so it's a much larger spaces for 3-bedroom. So that's and the cost per unit went up $11. So great, evolution of this practice. These are some of the early projects. A lot of good stuff came out of that knowledge base, and just want to so Walsh Construction. Check out this. This is the white paper he's written. He's a really good guy, very generous with his knowledge. And they are now, this is kind of the stepping stone by which most projects, affordable projects, are coming before now. Quite a few of them where like, are you doing CDBC? And that's a precursor to any design conversation. All right, any questions on that one? Okay.
What I said at the beginning, we're going to share some of our mistakes. You don't have to make them. Next project is both the project myself and several others are most proud of, and the project we're most embarrassed of. So we work in great places. This is another 1,000 kilometers further north in Bella, well up the coast in British Columbia. Huge amounts of snow, routinely 20 below Celsius. The charge from BC Housing was to create a prototype for small suite housing in small towns. It's not only big cities that have homeless problems, lots of problems in all size communities. And for smaller towns in British Columbia, they wanted to create, in the range of 20 units for homeless housing, folks with mental challenges, housing, senior housing. Particular building is seniors, and on each floor there's one person with mental challenges. Interesting population. Very cold climate, seniors housing mostly, 19 small suites, good form factor. We have pretty good air tightness. We used sand and CO2, no scout water, Zender HRVs, no cooling. We're really focused on keeping these things warm. The other funny charge they had was they wanted it to be possible to build a modular or possible to site build. So the architect had designed a building that could go either way, which is bizarre and strange. That's why you got this strange mix. The idea is that this was going to be possible to be sort of a mechanical piece, all the mechanical rooms here, and then these would be modular. So exactly what site built is what happens is, even though the provincial authority wants to do modular, it's cheaper, faster, higher quality, the small town mayor and the local lawmakers like, no, we want jobs in our community. We want to teach our tradespeople to do that stuff. You're not going to modular that. And so this political fight happens right away. And generally, the local community wins. So the modular doesn't happen as often. It would make sense. Pretty good form factor. This is a look from the side. Project. We've also actually revised late at a small crawl space rather than slab on face. So, great form factor, great cost factor, and it's, Dan mentioned, every corner in your building is another drywall turn, another 3-stud corner, another turn of the weather barrier on the outside. The fewer turns you have, it's astonishing how much money you can save the closer you bring the building forward. So the trick, and so many of these is done on a rectangle that doesn't look like that. This is a wall we call the ice cream sandwich wall, or Scott Kennedy, the architect, has driven it. We call it the Scott wall sometimes. Ice cream sandwich because you have this layer of pink or white foam in between two layers. So it's a 2x6 platform frame construction, really common in British Columbia. We can go up to 6 stories of 2x6 frame. This requires no change to the trades. So the outside attachment, the way we do the air barriers, and on the inside of it, we put a layer of foam, and inside of that a surface cap. Nice thing about this wall system is you can adjust this layer of foam for almost any climate zone, and all your details stay the same. It's not perfect, but it's really great for new crews in remote communities who have to do the finicky stuff inside out of the weather. They do the outside they know how to do, and then they do the inside stuff. Here's a quick visualization of how this particular wall frame comes together. Notice they have to wrap the air barrier around with these pieces, and the air barrier continues. The air barrier continues on the surface of this EPS foam, which has a layer of foil. So everything tapes back to that. Well, the air barrier comes up here, wraps around, and comes back to the insulation. Slid down in here to prevent a bolt joint there. So it's an odd wall system, but it works really well.
Sheathing on, structural sheathing on the outside?
On the outside, yeah, which means if you want to put on bricks or something else, you put it on the same way as anything else. Regular brick ledge with no effect on the thermal regime. So for affordable, replicable building that's been pretty easy to build, this company, Cornerstone Architecture, has done quite a few projects. But they're also doing exterior installation. We found for the first 5 or 6 years, there was a tremendous fetish around everybody developing their own wall. Everybody spent all this time thinking, what's the right wall for a house? And on and on and on. I actually hit a point where I was so frustrated, I was just screaming, I don't care what wall you use. Like, let's talk about the junction, ventilation, and everything else. And we've kind of grown out of that. We have 2 or 3 walls we use repeatedly now, but that was definitely a hallmark of our early years. Everybody was going to have perfect walls. I would urge you not to get too attached to one or the other. So here's what it looks like. When you back in and you infill that interior space with insulation there. Drywall looks like the cladding on it. As you can see, this is a serious winter town. One of the amazing things is I was here to do the preliminary loader test at this point. Outside temperature in the range of 20 below C. Inside temperature with one little heater, 15, 18 degrees C, just fine. The contracting company realized that heater heated the whole building. It's pretty good motor tests. Really simple mechanical system where we had residential style vendors on each floor, several of them in each room, mechanical rooms where they went right to the outside. Really trying to keep this as simple as possible. We didn't at this point have sort of the Swegens and the Metacity and larger systems in the markets. We're trying to make do with vendor style systems, even if it's multi-unit. Also, this is our first project, multi-unit project in Sandon. We did have a freezing problem with the extreme cold weather. The system reacted and shut itself down to defend itself against the cold weather and not freezing solid. Sandon replaced everything, like put new units on a plane. I gotta say, its manufacturers are amazing. We had new units on a plane within 48 hours. So what we did as a backup was the extra tank in each unit. So the Sandon tank, which feeds and separates as it's supposed to. We had a second storage tank that happened to be an electric resistance tank that was essentially a backup system. Residents never noticed that Sandon failed. You instantly from the monitor because they mess like a lot of electricity, like instantly into the door.
How many Sandons were?
3 Sandons and 3 backup. Basically went for each floor, and that allowed us to eliminate recirculation. So close to the unit, relatively small.
Can you describe why the Sandon shut down when it got so cold?
Yeah. And if you want more on it, contact John Miles, their technical representative who's been deeply involved with this. It was some kind of a system failure that it should have converted to a defensive mode where it keeps circulating through the unit, but somehow the unit instead shut down, stopped recirculating, and of course it froze solid at this kind of temperatures. We think part of the problem was that we put the outside unit in a semi-protected, semi-enclosed space with vent holes, and it actually got colder in that space than the outside temperature because the Sandon, of course, is producing cold and it's outside cold. And we realized in hindsight, when we use them, we'll put them in the best ventilated area we can possibly reach. We are really debating on several of our projects now between using multiple Sandon units or using one like Nile or Colmac or larger units. And there's pros and cons to both. And I wouldn't say we've convinced ourselves one or the other is better. In most mid-sized buildings, multiple Sandons is quite a bit less to install than one Colmac. One Colmac might be easier to maintain. And we don't have enough data to say which is more efficient, but they're both so efficient, it kind of doesn't matter. You're at COPs of 2.5 or 3, regardless.
I'll take one benefit, because we're doing this in Seattle with different specified water systems. If there's even the Colmac unit is more, has fewer problems as a unit. If it goes down, everything down.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've got, so we're on our project with 12 salmons, and if one goes down, you don't notice until you look at the pond.
How many units per salmon?
I think it's about 3, 4, or 5.
Okay.
And these are small. The reality that's happening for us is we're learning fast house and all electric buildings at the same time. Most of our fast house clients want 100% electrification. Yeah.
Yeah, so question, I do see a lot of projects in those capacity.
Yeah.
in that city. I'm seeing a lot of resistance still from engineers, especially for multifamily buildings. In fact, at this point, I can't make a conscious recommend the 50 unit, 100 unit go with heat pump water meters.
So there's two parts. Okay, there's two parts to that. And we've done the exact same thing. You can say again how honored I am. Just some, as I've listened to a lot of you and met with you and heard projects, talked to some architects, the kind of challenges I'm hearing here remind me of Vancouver like 8 or 9 years ago. We were having these same resistance. And there was definitely,
Did you say 8 or 9 years ago?
yeah. It's what it is. And when we started, we thought Orchards was way ahead of us. When we started, we thought Portland was way ahead of us. And somehow it sort of took off and stayed going in British Columbia and didn't keep going. But we were all blown away by Orchards at Ranker because it was so far ahead of what we were doing. But somehow, the world's weird. You figure that out. But here's where we were at several years ago, was that we had a lot of architects and kind of passionate energy weenies who trained on passive house, but not enough structural engineers and definitely not enough mechanical engineers. And it was a real effort on the part of Passive House Canada and the City of Vancouver and the British Columbia Institute of Technology, one of our trade training, to start training more MEP staff. And it wasn't until we trained way more mechanical engineers that there was this openness to do things different. And there were several years in my career where I just felt like my job every day was to fight with mechanical engineers, who I liked as people, but I just spent every day just hand-to-hand combat with mechanical engineers. And the huge lesson for those of us in Passive House Canada and at what is now the Zero Emissions Building Exchange in Vancouver, our kind of center for training, was, and it just hit us, we have to all come along. Architects, mechanical engineers, structural engineers, trades, developers, quantity surveyors, insurance providers. Like, we had to look at our entire ecosystem and we had to all get into this. We couldn't lead it with a few experts. And so we refocused our training and started creating sort of specialty passive house trainings for mechanical engineers. We started doing it in the offices of the big mechanical engineers. We started working through their trade groups. Now, I'm really delighted to say there are 3 mechanical engineering firms we work with repeatedly. We love working with them. We will quickly do a call, myself and the principal there, before we go to the client kickoff meeting to kind of agree what we're doing on this project, and it's smooth because they're on board, but we failed to bring them into our kind of family circle at the beginning, and we paid for it for a few years until we realized, you know what, we can't do this on our own. This is one of these things where the tide has to lift all the boats. We have to have that attitude.
Mechanical engineers in the room?
We'll fight later.
The same opinion of most mechanical engineers.
Actually do have some of that. We have a fantastic mechanical engineer who went through PHI training with me in 2010. So he's been around the block.
How can we expect people to, they don't know what we're talking about? They don't know where we're going. They don't know what we're doing.
So what I need are more examples of larger buildings in particular that are using water meters.
So that's the second part. We tried initially to bring like the Mayakawa and some of the Japanese large heat pumps to the market. Got somebody to be the distributor. We're all set to go. Nobody ordered it. After 3 years, the distributor gave up. So getting the kind of distribution supply chain at the same time the buildings come online is really hard. We're trying to get them to reintroduce the product to market. Homac's been huge, a huge help for us. And on our larger buildings, we're doing it where we have multiple Homac's. I understand you have better supply chain here on the East Coast with Nile. We use Nile air heat pumps. So there's a supply chain issue at the same time. And we have last year, we're way on top of it. Last year, the Zero Emission Building Exchange took a group of developers to Brussels. Brussels has the largest group of large half-house type buildings. So we created this tour and went with a bunch of our clients in Brussels and toured building after building. We wanted really well for a week, go on a tour with like billionaire developers. And it was huge in terms of changing their awareness of what could happen. We're actually discussing maybe later this year or next year doing a tour of mechanical engineers to Japan, where these large heat pumps are common. We're just trying to create a tour because people just see it in action and realize this is a normal thing. Here's a whole bunch of manufacturers. Here's some engineers who work through these processes. So we recognize there's some education shortfalls, and we're just kind of problem by problem trying to get this through.
So I would like to echo that. So Mike Steffen from Walls Construction, like, is pulling the rug out from under me. So I'm trying to get heat pump operators because he's like, I don't want to do it. I won't stand behind it. I would tell my clients not to do it. It's not dependable, and I'm going to get the call, Dan. You're not going to get the call when it doesn't work. And so it's not just mechanical engineers; it's the contractors, and so it's taken some very some dedicated clients who are like, no, sorry, Mike, this is what we're doing, and the systems are. There's some coming out. I'd say California definitely has doing a lot of work on this. San Jose, I think it's the 10th largest municipality in the United States, just declared it can't hook up to natural gas, even on multifamily. So Brookline's doing it, right? So it's coming, and so that's the conversation to have that I've been having with both the naysayers. It's like, you're gonna have to do this anyway. And so I know you don't want to be out front, hanging in the wind on it, but there are systems in place, and they are using these various parts. And we're going to have to figure it out. So Seattle, it went on the agenda of the city council. It got pulled back largely because of the affordable housing community said no, or the multi-family housing community said no. But it's going to come back, and we're predicting within 16 months it's mandatory.
Great picture presentation.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a guy, I blanked on his name, at Stephen Winter, who did a cold climate heat pump survey. He's a great presenter. NYSERDA is doing a cold climate heat pump study. We're doing a cold climate heat pump study, RDH, on the West Coast. And it is a subject of a huge amount of research, and I totally agree. Both what's happening on the supply chain, on the research side, kind of every few months, there's a lot more to know. So, do you mind if I get back to this one? Cool. So, it's a pretty typical kind of unit for seniors, folks with mild disabilities. Going back to this primary energy question, now the interesting thing is we've done big luxury single-family homes that are larger than this building. But they have one family, if that, when they're not at their home in Zurich or somewhere else. This building has this relatively small building with 19 quarter life elevators. So again, that issue of internal heat gains is different. Now we calculate these in both PSA, but it changes the amount of primary energy quite a bit. There is a new calculator in PHI, and PS also is dealing with how to calculate. I spent a lot of time. I just want to know that something both programs are working. Now I want to talk about some of the problems we have. It was very remote. It was a relatively conventional construction company that never done a fast house before. We weren't able to be there every day. We were making trips over and so on. There was a communication issue. I want to talk about a couple. One, this huge amount of work that went to preserve the on-site tree. See this area that no one goes right? There's an on-site tree that was built. The entire building was moved and designed for it because it created great shade on the south windows. But on the first day with the trailer there. We didn't find out about it until later. The entire building built on a tree that was cut down. The other issue is the contractor, this is a place that is big black flies. This is northern Canada. It's got black flies the size of baseball players. So the contractor had this idea, we're going to build these great custom bug screens that are common up there. Aftermarket bug screens, really plug in. And the contractor sent shop drawings of the windows to the screen maker. Contractor did not explain that we were going to over insulate the window. So the screen maker made these big, great bug screens, but they didn't fit because, of course, we had expanded and over insulated these screens. So this kind of communication problem we try to address more and more now through construction verification. In addition to the spec, yes, it's in the spec, but how many of you have contractors just didn't read the spec and looks at you like it's your problem? What, you expected me to actually read the contract documents? So we go through construction verification plans, we walk through them with the contractor in much more detail. We try to do it in person. We try to do it several times. If there is turnover on the contractor, we try to re-kick off to go through a lot of these kinds of details. This is the checklist for our basic verification plan. This gets more elaborate on some buildings. This is kind of the minimum. You can actually get this outline, and some of the procedures we use in Vancouver, search for this document. That's about relaxation guidelines for larger projects. It's seen it through the website. Can't find it, email me, happy to send it to you. But we're gradually systematizing, eliminating these. I want to just talk about some of the problems we had here and how we dealt with them. Achieving the primary inch chart was very difficult before we had this calculator way to look at it. So we went through a lot of hoops to get there. We probably wouldn't go through. Builder changed the window order. It probably cost the project an extra $100,000 by that window order 6. Primarily because they changed the solar heat gain value of the last year, essentially. The bid they got took it away from people. So we went from a solar heat gain value of about 0.3 to about 0.6. So it exacerbated overheating problem dramatically in an attempt to save money. I don't say the contractor genuinely thought they were saving. They wound up forcing cooling. The air source heat pumps froze. So it had extreme cold snap. Yeah, it was very, very, very cold. We think it was a programming error. At least John Miles thinks it's a programming error. We've dealt with these by things like better tools for looking at primary energy in large buildings. And at least on the Passive House Institute side, I think this is doing the same thing. Much better tools, much more options for multi-unit buildings. So whichever program you're working in, I urge you to make sure you're using the latest tools for calculating primary energy in large buildings. This piece of Passive House has fallen dramatically in the last year. Requiring the CPHC to approve all change orders. Seems simple and obvious, but it wasn't in the spec. We're done. Literally kind of a window change filter on site. Windows that look quite right. Gradually realize that. We are running a monitoring study of cold climate heat pumps that got funding as part of the problem together. The good news is the basic idea of the format works. So there's a similar project based on similar design that put together in Merit using much less extreme climate temperature. This one used an entirely different wall system where we put these I-joists outside and filled them with rock wool. Blown in chunks of rock wool, not solid rock. We've had a somewhat similar project in Whistler, BC, with panelizing system. So this idea of developing relatively mid-sized, small buildings in small towns has been pretty successful. We have 2 more on books. And while they're having problems in some of those buildings, it is operating below its targets. The electrical bills are very low. Most of the year, the tenants are very happy. Kind of feeling some relative success with the BC housing structure, understanding some of the issues. Questions on that before I hand it on? No questions?
So what are you using in those for your, so all air source heat pumps?
The original plan was to use only small electric baseboard heaters, actually under a little window seat.
No AC.
With no AC whatsoever. It's a very cold place.
plan was to open the windows and get cross ventilation. Cooler. Not the window that's linked here, but between the change in solar heat gain values, the loss of shading from the tree, loss of shading from exterior shading that was value engineered out, also by the builder. And a mistake made in the mechanical room where that extra electric resistance water tank was directly below uninsulated tin ducts from the HRV. So the HRV that should be cooling air overnight was actually warming air overnight, created this set of overheating conditions. Now, it's worth noting the overheating was not more extreme. Northern Canada is heating up twice as fast as like climate change. They're already seeing a 2-degree rise year. Like just we're 2 degrees ahead of our climate. So our climate file, which of course is centered on 30-year backward look like all climate files, is centered on 1985. It's the year the movie Back to the Future came out. So we're designing these fine-tuned past house buildings for Marty McFly, but making people live in them now and in for the next 20 years, 30 years. And so, in addition to these issues inside the building, we have outside the building changes. We've made 2 reactions to all of this. One, we're a lot more careful about construction changes. 2, we now model every project we do to future IPCC files for that region. And we're getting better and better at tweaking our IPCC files. We model everything, the 2020, 2050, and 2080. And we model hourly as well as in PHP or what we have.
Could you describe what a future IPCC file is?
Yeah, we're taking data from our IPCC center, there's universities all over the world, center for their regions, working with creating those expectations and simply converting those to the climate files we put in either PHPP or FPASA or whatever our project.
These like hourly data files?
Yeah, somewhere. And you can buy simplified ones from, blanking on the name later. Email me later. You can buy them ready to go from this company in Switzerland that produces slightly outdated versions. You can probably get free ones from your local IPCC research center because it's something they're doing globally. It's preparing.
Medio norm?
Yeah, medio norm. That's it. Thank you. Appreciate that. What we're finding is that at least in Vancouver, I can't say this, our actual weather looks way more like the 2030 prediction than it does like our historical predictions. That we essentially hit 2030 on the moderate IPCC predictions already. And part of that's for heat island and some other things happening. And that's not year round, that's kind of summer, late summer. The second thing we've done is for BC Housing in the city of Vancouver, we now have to do an hourly model for the most sensitive suites in every building and hit an ASHRAE overheating target in addition to the fast house targets. What we're finding is that where conventionally we've done social housing in British Columbia without any cooling, unlike we can't hit those targets in double stacked quarter buildings. We have pass-through ventilation, like in a townhome, we can hit it on the assumption you're opening the windows for those periods. But on double stacked quarter, we're pretty much forced into cooling. This has been a real shock for social housing providers who suddenly have an extra $2 million bill for every single building for cooling. But it applies not only to fast house. I mean, non-fast house buildings are even worse than fast house buildings. The other thing that's happening to us, for last summer we were spared, but for the last 3 summers before that, we had really extensive forest fires in the Pacific Northwest. Not quite on the scale that Australia had a few weeks ago, but enough that we have these heavy smoke events per week. The forest fires tend to happen during the hottest weeks of the year. And so at exactly the time when a non-air conditioned building should be opening its windows at night, they're all closing to try to keep smoking. That's exacerbating heat problems. More and more, some of the work we're doing for our clients is around looking at adaptation issues, smoke, flooding, overheating, these other issues. And we're trying to use passive house buildings not as the end all and the be all, but we view passive house as a baseline from which to design even better and more resilient buildings. We think passive house takes in a lot of the core conditions. From that base, we can talk about more shading, more cooling, more resilient to flooding, more resilient to heavy rain. Yeah, I think things are changing. Things are changing. If you look at it, so Seattle, if anybody's had the opportunity to be in Seattle, you can look at the maps, sea level rise, and say, okay, oh, whoa, they raised it a whole meter. We're actually looking, it's going to happen here. If you look at what turns into an island, in Seattle, it's our neighborhoods that look into an island. This project is actually built in a neighborhood that literally was an ocean going port ages ago, before they put the locks in direct, but it's close to the water. It's on one of these little hills, but we are very close to the sound. We're going to be facing these issues, and talking about a building that's facing all of these concerns with, it's actually not a double loading corridor, but it has all of these heating issues. This micro housing. So Pax Ventura, it's a little infill project. This was on a single family lot. The lot is 55 by 110. And this building is 2 inches back from the property line here, 1 inch back from the property line here, and 1 inch back from the property line there, and to the property line in this parking lot. So yeah, we have a variance for your audience sake overhang. It's long as it's short. So this is in a little neighborhood called Columbia City. 96 blocks. It's not. We're a little ways from downtown. We're 20 minutes from downtown, but this building is 4 blocks from the light rail station, and it's top shelf, like all sorts of fun things going on around it. Seeing a tremendous amount of gentrification, displacement of the local community, as well as just these buildings. And the fact that you could fit 35 units on a single lot, it's a big mover for what the city of Seattle is doing. We're about the same size as Boston, but we don't have the suburb capacity. We similarly have the water on one side, but we've got a mountain range on another. So we're growing this long, kind of like really terrible traffic methodology, and we just don't have this century-plus old infrastructure. So we're looking at these neighborhoods to soak up a lot of housing, the rezoning of. So this happened in the rezoning, and this is what you end up with. We have 143 square feet. So it's called a sea dune. And this is a very typical floor plan. What we're looking at in our this is a market rate project. The affordable housing community will not go here. It used to go here, but the market rate is building it. And it is, when you walk into that hotel room, and the one that has a little kitchenette right here and the bathroom right here, that's it. So it's and you can really stack these up, and you can get a lot of units in a building. And this one rents for what they say, $1,400 a month. So here we have sink, countertop, stove top, refrigerator.
Yeah.
Heating and cooling. So Monty said it earlier, electric resistance. Like that's what we heat our buildings with. This one has a little coat heater right above it. 7 cents kilowatt.
And it's hydro.
Okay, might go up there. It's also in this project, it's a municipally owned. So but on that level, sorry, it's a tangent. We also get absolutely no incentives, anything other than you don't have to get sales tax put on the PV system. Wow. So, no, but if you put a PV system on, you're offsetting all that. We don't get that. So we're still putting PVs. Still doing the work. I'm sorry. We're still saving the energy. We're still producing energy. So there's a lot of returns.
Low energy prices are an extreme disincentive to passive housing. Yeah. None of our projects pencil out on energy savings ever. That's why our focus is on carbon reduction and long-term sustainability. So yes, it's a blessing, but it's also a curse.
So, and what's the heat bill on this thing? There's just so many internal heat gains. It's tremendous. So we've got 35 units. They're live work, but you're double height. You know, this is what we got, 11'7" from wall to wall. Ceiling heights on live work. It's a funny spot. It's a funny demographic. It's a funny architectural style. But it's what is being. But it's one of the ways we're delivering with our housing crisis. We have a straight up housing crisis. It's not just an affordable. The market rate is tremendously pressures. This is how we meet it. Yeah. So 1350 for a studio. I just pulled this up off the web page. But we got that walk score. This is because of our high construction costs, how people are getting the performance with these really densely packed. They also end up with really good building. Right? That's a pretty decent building. It's not perfect. But what you also notice, what's in the back up over here? This silly thing chopped out on the back. What the heck is that? Something, another thing that would never fly in Boston. That is an exterior walkway. Why do we do that? Yeah, it moves it, pass ensembles out there, but what really it does, it means this developer got to put 4 more units in this because it's scored well, it's not conditioned. It's outdoor space. So it doesn't count against what we have in this 4 area ratio. So we got 4 extra units, and that's what they're paying attention to. Whatever. They're building these buildings without exterior quarters. And it wouldn't work possible. So wow, theory of challenges though. And you know, there's this theory like, oh, it's great. We have that less area to condition, so on and so forth. But what do we have in every one of those exterior doors?
Door threshold.
Door thresholds and walkway. The nightmare continues. But we also, is anybody here when they're home and they need cross ventilation? It's only their front door. There is no cross ventilation. It's a little tube with a big window. So but that's the opportunity. It's a single family block. And to the east, it's going to be another multi-family building. So we end up with this thing. We've got the exterior stairs, and anybody fire code and stuff. I mean, that trumps everything. Fire code trumps. Okay. So with this is exterior circulation space. So all of this area is now needs to be highly rated for. How do you get exterior door that's rated? There is one. But you end up with a nice space. Parking lot next door. It's tiny, but people aren't going to these spaces to like have 5 friends. And it's not just 20-year-olds living in these spaces. There's plenty of them that are regularly occupied by folks who are retired because you're able to live in this community and you've got good access. And you don't need that space. So this is our box. There is a commercial space which is finally rented out after a while. But it's pretty darn good form. Here's our live work areas and the 3 stories above. It's all wood, it's wood frame construction. Did a lot of work starting at the ground level. We have high seismic concerns. Big seismic concerns. And we know this is a pretty tall building and it's only 54 feet, 11 inches wide. And so, and it has a tremendous turnover. So the structural engineers, we worked with them extensively, but not extensively. And so they, at the very late in the game, they said, oh, well, you need this, you need this, you need this. And so it just opened a can of worms of giant range. But put the whole project back 2 months. That was one of the most costly efforts and had tremendous repercussions on it. But we ended up with this pretty cool detail. So here we have the massive grade beam around the perimeter. The property line is literally right here. And so, but all of this could be outside the envelope. We actually got better than this, where we cut that by 2/3 by really just increasing this thermal break here. And even that little angle there, working and working and working and working. What are we laughing
About that base corner where the steel plate is meeting the concrete, not much insulation.
at? There isn't. But the fact that it's an angle, actually, that little line would have the thermal vision. And as you'll see here, there's a lot of.
How they poured that purple game.
Yeah. So actually, so if you place this, place your poly, tape it to the stem wall with your little foam is the curve. So that creates it after you do the aerator. This is one of the biggest aerator challenges in building. Worked well though, but this solved this tremendous seismic concern, and I mean, and the fact that we had a lot of the building that was inside, a lot of it outside, it was moving back and forth. So we had to detail the foundation, essentially set it aside and say we need to work within it. This is one of the solutions. But at the same time, there's so many internal heating. We only needed 4 inches of insulation. We just barely needed about code. There's so many parts and pieces, but it was really getting down to the parts and pieces. This is what we ended up with, and so cast in place. Now we've got our insulation. It's going to be placed afterwards here, and then we're going up at our frame wall above. So here we're framing the roof, and you may look at that and say, oh, it's just a standard frame building with OSB. This building was those structurally set panels, sit panels. Good in many ways, and a challenge in a whole heck of a lot of ways. And when your construction schedule is delayed by 2 months because the structural coordination is altered, and it moves the framing back, and then it moves into the rainy season in Seattle and starts framing in November, you get a very wet winter sitting. So this was a tremendous challenge, but it worked to a large degree. With a lot of diligence from sites. And so as our walls went up, and then unfortunately, the whole building wasn't sheeted dense glass, just on again, off again, and so the air barrier jumps back and forth. A lot of concerning elements of that exterior enclosure. And when we're talking about the building, it's just a big view, but it actually looks pretty cool. Here's all those doors. Every one of those doors, you all know that and there are 51. They are all used, and it was a challenge. And when do you see? When do you do your lower door systems? They literally, I mean, they're roughing in the plumbing, but they're putting in the drywall on one floor, but they're roughing in the plumbing on the other. When do we get access? So we did about 10 lower door tests on this building, but really, only time we ever got to use the manometer was so otherwise it was just using smoke. So we were in there all the time, chasing and chasing a lot concerning each other. But it was the only way we could get into the building and really make sure. And we luckily got there to the very end. Mechanical systems, there's semi-centralized HRVs, semi-centralized ventilation, where there's 6. It says here there's 7, but the value engineered down to 6. So there nothing is more than 2 floors. The fire damping is minimalized, but it's these 4 Zender units, Zender 5 units are serving the building. A lot of your projects are using unitized ventilation out here. I've noticed multifamily projects, every unit has
Changing. A lot of experience.
I mean, Lonnie's comment about the fires. After 1 day of fires in this area, that filter just filled with sweat. And they're not cheap. So there's a project up in North Seattle that has 80 unit building, and they use the Lunos system, and each unit has about 4 Lunos systems. And so who's going to replace thousands of dollars of filters twice, 3, 4 times a year for so it's just, I don't know, the semi-centralized systems, we have a lot more potential for it's great. It's great equipment. It's great for plunking down on existing buildings. I do know people that use it. Minotaur.
Sorry.
Let's talk about that after. This is a long topic. Most of our multi-unit projects right now are Sweegen, central. The Sweegen system with the dampers is really effective, and it has an integration with the Mitsubishi for a cooling coil. So we're doing a little bit of preheating and pre-cooling through the centralized system. It requires more coordination through the building for the duct network, but it's way less maintenance for the operator. And at the end of the day, probably more. The only projects that are using local systems now are doing so because they have some reason they can't make this weekend work. So, for example, we have one 20-story mass timber building that's just struggling to get its floor height, and there's no place for ductwork in this building. They've crammed in so many units, and the mass timber floors take up a whole foot between. So they're doing local vendors in every unit simply because they can't figure out a way after bashing their heads for months and months and months to get ducts in for something.
But what this centralized, so also secondarily, 35 units. How do you lower test a building? Does anybody have radar in here? Anybody do a lot of load test? How would you load test 35 units?
With an open corridor to the outside, that's pretty difficult.
Yeah.
There's no connection. You tend to hold outside off in that corridor.
Or take
Slinky,
however many you
connect them all together.
So what we're able to do, because the units are very small, we're able to use the ventilation. So we had six doors going simultaneously in the building, and using the ventilation to do it. So we're pulling out the cores of the Zenders and absolutely checking all of them to make sure we have the same pressure. Various locations.
And all interconnected.
And all interconnected. And so we only needed 6 door doors instead of 30. I think the 35 door door between Vancouver and Seattle. But, so,
I don't even want to think what we charge.
yeah. So here's our exterior corridor, and almost made it. The bottom floor because of that slab. The vinyl doors are a challenge. Vinyl, even if it ways, they insulate really well. The vinyl doors have a hard time sealing. And this side, if you recall, had quite some double height, essentially storefront glazing, and those were a major challenge. So I'll add it all up. We ended up having a hard time. Yeah. But here's a ventilation system. This also has the buffer, so we're using some Chiltrix units to add a little bit more. And then the HRV closets. But one of the main problems, in this building are, this is how this one unit is moving through to distributed ventilation through other units, and that's a challenge. That's a problem. We don't have a corridor to run the duct, so add up all these issues, and you can hear your neighbor through your ducting. And secondarily, because the structural wasn't coordinated with the mechanicals, we ended up having to do a lot of work, and we ended up with very high static pressure, and the units have to run at 95%, and so then these two units they won't let the roar of the ventilation units challenge. So at this moment, the thing is holding the building up in certification, the ventilation system. We can't get the ventilation. But
Will that get certified for that?
no, not that. We're still working on it. So so we have our shading going up. That's these nice exterior blinds. It's kind of a fun system that the architects came up with. Here's the SIP panel going up. We didn't need to take all. There's so many heaters in this little building. Right? There's so many people. So we only ended up on some of the walls with a 5.5-inch plate. And some of the walls have a 2x4 in front of that 5.5-inch plate. So mix and match.
Those blinds move?
Yeah.
Exterior?
Yep.
How do people move?
So this one right here is stacked over this panel. So the window is split here. So you open the window there. Absolutely. They would cook if they don't. Sorry. Yeah, but, so let's just open your window and move your blinds back and forth. Fairly, you know, the cost cutting, this was on the chopping block 12 times, but it was just like really, this is the west, this fully west facade.
Can I jump in here for a second? There's nothing you can do to make a building cheaper than exterior off at once. It allows you to have more sunlight coming in through more open glass and yet still keep heat off. And yet every first project in North America fights it as if it's impossible. Exterior operable blinds are ubiquitous in Europe, in Japan, across much of the world. In another course I do called the Pattern Language from Bath Styles, I actually go through a series of 12 different designs for operable exterior blinds that function all over the world. This is just one of these hurdles we have to get over with our companies here. We see projects that are willing to put, $2 million in air conditioning or thicken the walls because they've gone to a lower solar heat gain coefficient, but won't do exterior blinds at $100,000 because that's just possible. So it is, I would say, the biggest cultural barrier problem we have. We're actually talking about specific courses through ZEBEX on exterior blinds, because frankly, for a lot of buildings, as the climate changes, exterior blinds as part of a facade upgrade could probably buy them another 10 or 15 years without air conditioning. Just as they try to extend the life of the building without an entirely new mechanical system. So it's just one of those things people have to get over. In Switzerland, you cannot put air conditioning in until you have the exterior blinds. Like it's a precondition for air conditioning the buildings.
You're talking about the roll down exterior?
You can roll down fabric, you can have louvers, you can have louvers that rise, you can have louvers that separate, you can have these kind of blinds that slide, you can have French doors, you can even have electrochromatic glass if you really are determined to spend a lot of money into it. There are a lot of ways, and we have a high rise that is looking at electrochromatic glass in lieu of operable blinds, but it still works. The physics of it works the same way.
So I'm gonna,
It's tremendously important.
I really like working with Monty because we get to debate these things. And this developer, his next project has air conditioning off. So for him, the deliverables to the client, the market rate was like, it didn't cost the same. If it was cost neutral, I'm delivering a higher market value building. They can put the curtains up, they've got an air conditioner. And unquestionably, it is a more efficient building with this. However, the investment that one of these blinds is significant. And so I'm going to go ahead. The renewable energy production in our region is tremendously significant when we need cooling. So in that balance, by what energy are we saving? When we need cooling is generally when we get a lot of renewable energy. So I understand absolutely it's more energy efficient building if we use shading. However, in terms of the long-term goal of meeting the energy crisis, the climate crisis, with buildings we can afford, I would say that exterior blinds are on the chopping block. Sorry.
Air conditioning is more important than shade, or more value added.
Terrifically budget. Terrifically budget. For single family houses, absolutely. Multifamily buildings, big facades. The maintenance cost is going to be, it's going to be a lot. Who's going to get up there in the bucket?
What if it's built in?
Built in what?
Shade.
I have those, and I just had one break. Those aren't. There's no simple solution to it. And so it's very project dependent. And exterior shades are awesome. They're great. I'm just not sure that this way, especially in our climate where our needs are pretty minor. Secondarily, you've got such a dehumidification issue. Honestly, I know in Texas, they're actually looking at lowering the performance of the building, putting in high solar heat gain glass, so that the air conditioner actually runs more.
Yeah.
So the problem is that when you make the unit more efficient, you lower the cooling load. The air conditioner, to deliver that cooling load, no longer delivers the required dehumidification. Yeah. So you have to have a dehumidification system in addition to or separate or integrated with your air conditioner, which starts to get a lot more complicated. So one mindset is fine, just raise the cooling load to the point the humidification load can happen. And you cut that, and the justification is that is when you have the most solar. You have more hours of daylight. And so if you're trying to go for a net zero approach as opposed to a carbon first approach, you could argue that having more PV renewable available will offset the additional usage. You know why they call them Venetian blinds? Because the Venetians have been using them for thousands of years.
So I'll tell you, the reason that these blinds stayed through the end of this project, the final reason was because that the design review board loved it so much that they have to go through city review to and that was a very
this design is a little bit of a failure. Too much like the fridge, they don't actually function quite the way they do. But I completely agree with you. And the supply chain out of Europe is fantastic. And it's one of the things, at least in Western Canada, we're trying to work with our suppliers. In Europe, most window makers sell an integrated blind solution or a couple of add-on blind solutions. And we're trying to work with our window makers to at least bring that product into the marketplace so we can work through that.
But make sure you have good customer support. I'll say that because, sorry, I have a problem right now. I ordered my blinds from Europe. I love them. Oh my gosh, fantastic! Everybody loves it. One of them broke. Who's going to fix it?
I don't want to push this too far, but as a solar guy, I just have to say, if you can solve the problem at this building with a mechanical means instead of the power means, put the solar to use on the grid to help all the other buildings that are not taking care of the mechanical.
This was a very expensive solution.
Yeah.
This was a very expensive solution.
And totally continue this over
Yeah,
here.
another time.
It is a debate that keeps going, and I think that's a really important one. And I think I'll say this, what has pushed these discussions with all of our clients is students we started giving them models for 2050 and 2080. Because all of the common sense goes out the window. And you suddenly find we have whole new humidity levels, whole new dehumidification levels, the shading plus the cooling at a low rate can do something that the cooling alone couldn't do. But when we look at current climate in the Northwest, okay, I can solve that. When we look at future climate, what is it? We look a lot more like Boston in summer, And so we have to actually solve the problem.
You also notice we don't even put post. Okay. Any more questions on that one?
Okay, so we've shown quite a few smaller projects. I'm going to work up to what is the typical size project for most of what we're doing. We're a little bit different community than other places. We are a city of glass, and we're a city that about 10 years ago, the city council decided we wanted to set real green ambitions and realized that most of our carbon emissions were coming through our buildings, and we had to stop building so much out of glass. And so we've gone through a real sudden change over the last 5 years. Started building off the peninsula and into more mid-rise across the city. This is our absolute typical building. It probably looks really familiar to you. You've got a concrete podium, and there's 2 stories of parking down underneath, and all told, 5 stories of wood on top of that. This is that same wall system we talked about earlier, but with thinner. There it is, approaching construction, and there it is. This was the first building of this type in Vancouver. This one architecture firm now has another 15 like this in development, and there are quite a few other architecture firms basically rebuilding this type. I have sat on the judging committee for the International Fast House Conference for the last couple of years. This building, this mid-rise, multi-unit, small building is the global housing form. I could take pictures from all over the world. I have literally showed them myself. Where is this? Like, no, that's India. No, that's Austria. No, that's China. This is the building we're building all over the world.
And my view is that mostly electric, passive house, mid-rise housing is the killer app for the global housing crisis and the global climate crisis. So let's get good at it. This particular project is called the Heights. It's 85 unit market rental. I want to call out the developer, 8th Avenue developer, had a lot of courage to go through this at the time they did. Cornerstone Architecture now only does passive house. They will charge you more if you don't want to do it. Because the entire office has got their heads around doing this. And it also, it's an interesting way we work with them. On our early project, we were deeply involved, doing a lot of work with them. We now work as their certifier and occasional consultant. They pretty much do the vast majority of the work on their own. And as certifiers, it's easy because it's kind of the same wall over and over. It's the same building details over and over. And so, you know, it gets more efficient as it goes on. When we sit down and you want to look at a new project now, instead of looking at all the problems I'm going to show you, we're like, okay, what's different about this building? Well, we're doing this funky door detail. Well, we want to try a different way to do the metal. These units are down to site as the ones that we were just looking at. These are typical. There are some studios. Most are one bedrooms, quite a few two bedrooms, a few three bedrooms. But, you know, these are relatively nice units. Relatively nice. This is an all rental project. I want to go back to this. This was our first passive house apartment building of this size. The construction costs were pretty carefully costed about 5% more than code at the time. Now our buildings are averaging about 3% more than code for this. Part of that is because we have a better supply chain and more experience. Part of it is because code keeps creeping up, but passive house stays here. And so the delta recovery was a little less every focus. Sorry? This building is 4 years old now. But it's 25 years old, sorry. The other thing that was really important in this building, I would urge you to do as you get into projects, we gave more tours than anybody. We were doing tours 2-3 nights a week. This is the lead architect and a dear friend of mine, Scott Fendi. He got to the point he could do these tours drunk. I mean, it's, you know, like, I mean, we really recognized there was a lot of passion and interest in all kinds of levels, and made everything we did in the years to follow easier than hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people had been through it. The retail level, this is where you are on the ground floor, wasn't rented right away. It often happens you have to do retail in Vancouver and you can't rent it. So it became kind of a de facto tour center. We had some sample walls part of it for a long period of time. I just urge you on your early projects to get as many people as you possibly can. This is the penthouse level. These levels have those big patios around it. The lower level is a little wider. I show this one because the way we did the HRVs, we didn't have Sweetens or Fantastic at the time. We just weren't available in the market or Minerva's. So we had Zenders in vertical stack. So the Zenders sat in this closet accessing the hallway, and they served a vertical stack of identical apartments coming down. It's worked out fine. We haven't had stack pressure problems that's here. It's been relatively easy to service. The one downside is it's noticeably louder in the top floor hallway because it's just bristly. It's like walking through a refrigerator shelf or something. The noise doesn't transfer into the unit. Mostly there's closets and we insulated fairly well around those to minimize noise transfer. The other thing I would note is that, you know, we have a specification from ASHRAE about noise transfer between units in wood frame buildings. You have that problem of the cord that's created. We have a solid plywood floor and the two walls on it. It's like both units are living on a guitar. We have noticed in all of our passive house buildings, there is a perception of more noise unit to unit because we don't hear the street noise. Triple pane and all that insulation, the street noise goes down. All of a sudden, your neighbor's really pissing you off. And so much so that at RDH, we're working with a sound engineer. And we're talking about developing a slightly different specification for noise transfer between units that would be voluntary at this point. But instead of the fairly simple steps we take to put one layer of sheathing between two units on the back of studs and interrupt it and to try to cut the break, we may take some additional layers to minimize noise. It is not as big of a problem on a concrete building, but it's a real problem on the okay, ice cream sandwich wall again, but a thinner sandwich. Same pieces here, thinner here. Again, Pros and cons to this wall, we're probably doing more exterior rock wool insulation than we are this, but where the pros is, it's really quick. You can see it kind of coming up here, as it comes around those inside pieces, you can see it wrapped, you had to learn to wrap it. The first time they did it, they put all the construction safety railings that cut through the thing.
Mold issues with these buildings that are going up in this weather?
No,
No.
no, not really. I mean, they dry out pretty well. I mean, this is rainy season.
Yeah, do you mediate them to dry out or do
They're typically, when it gets this wet, you're running heaters for a while before you seal it. You have to run heaters to get down to it. So.
It's a,
put in your
DC in Washington would have some of the most aggressive, you're, per code, you're not allowed to close up your building until you've got your things.
You have to have a consultant measuring moisture content before you can go in. It's not a theory, no, you will, inspector will stop. That is the quickest way to get construction stopped. It's something everyone's aware of, it's moisture content.
So you don't use zip?
No. In this case, the air barrier is on the inside. There is going to be weather barrier on the outside. The standard practice in these facilities, gaps are slow. You know, it is less and less necessary to move to exterior insulation. Also, in our domestic supply, our plywood is way cheaper than cheap. So our supply of locally made plywood at a decent price point, this would be a pretty big cost increase for not a lot of money. That will equalize over time. It was starting to equalize, and your new president kind of gave us our supply chain back. So that stopped. And frankly, our construction costs have been really crazy the last few years since Trump's race started.
Also, Huber didn't supply the West Coast until it proved the products in other climates. So we were the last market they entered. So it's just, I had the special order for the first number project. Like it was a two-week lead. Just because I think because we've got a lot of moisture issues. I got just as many lawyers as me.
We'd rather use plywood. It'll dry out. And the thing is, the plywood gets more open as it gets wet. Cold, so it kind of self-dries to some degree. But sorry. Initially, we only had one window in the market. See how you make Euroline. We now have quite a few windows. So all of our early projects, we have frame triples. You can see there that the quick thermal is our air barrier taped on the inside. It's sealed with the outside.
Did you have any problems getting the framer to do that detail around the rims?
The windows were installed by the contractor's own crew.
So not the windows, but the framing. Let's go back. When I go back one more. When I look at this, I think every framer would say, okay, it'll cost an extra.
It was hard in the first building. It was hard in the first floor. Okay. I mean, you're right. The first floor was in.
Do they put weeks on those renows when they put them in, the weekles on the outside, or just use the window?
Here? The window here?
Yeah.
So they're going to put down, this is the sub flash. Secondary flash. And there's like a horseshoe for a map, so when you come down, you back down. And you come out that will go to a lower plane, it'll be flashing over. So the inner plane will drain and the outer plane. So the entire base, basically.
Outside?
We have probably more stringent code requirements for window door installs and water than I think.
So they're taking the outside? And that doesn't screw you up on the doors?
No, you can either caulk or tape from the backside. So you can caulk from the back to drain out.
It's a lot easier.
Send me your email later. We have catalogs on our website that are full of detail. This is the basis of our work for these countries, and we have to I want to talk about just a couple of problems we learned first about in this building, but we've seen on building after building. So this building sits on the first slab above the retail, and then the second slab above the parquet. Parquet is cold. We are a seismic zone. It's a tremendous amount of sort of bracing, structural strapping that has to happen to that. Working out the thermal bridging details in these locations
turned out to be much more challenging than we thought. We also have a problem because we're a city that this parkade is often built to lot line, even though the building is set back in the yard. So the parkade is better than the building, which makes this harder to solve in many ways, and that's routinely the case for us. We have all these areas where we have this intensive thermal bridging. In this situation, to insulate under the slab is impractical. There's so much of the slab is exposed to the outside. So we end up insulating above the slab, which creates a whole bunch of new building performance questions. So we are taking various forms of slightly higher density EPS, usually with little strips of wood in it we can sink nails into, sort of building the layer up above the slab within the wood walls for detail. The detail looks something like this. And you've got your slab, it's cold down here. Sometimes we do a mild one layer of spray getting our 10 or 12 down here. Got the insulation here. Subfloor. Some buildings we're putting on concrete topping here, and some buildings we're not. We're just, if the room is relatively small, 10, 12 feet across, we'll just do a double layer of plywood here. A parallam or composite wood beam here. Our initial projects had a regular 2x6 or 2x8 here. Our testing found this say 2 points over time. So we switched to a plastic finish here. We've also switched to a dimple barrier here. So if any water traps down, it can drain along that, and there are occasional drain holes coming down. The fear in these buildings and all wood buildings, frankly, is a slow water leak you don't know about. A big flood out there in the floor, you got to fix it in the other building. A slow water leak that's somehow rotting away here for years and years and years. So that's our main kind of building design. We've refined this detail significantly over a dozen or so buildings, but this was the original piece. It has proven on building after building we've asked, wouldn't it make more sense to insulate down here? On building time level, good. You love it. It's always cheaper to do it on top. Cheaper, less square space, easier to build, easier to control. So insulating above the slab, it's something we came to reluctantly, and it has a lot of custom details that go with it, but it's been absolutely the cost-effective way to. Here's a picture of the first one. Again, we switched to a plastic plate here, so you can see the plate that's building up the walls and go on top of it. It's trickier at the outside of the building, because you have sort of a piece here, on the side wood bolts here. This is a different wall assembly where we have exterior rock wool on the outside, building up exterior foam draining up there. In many of these buildings, parkade slabs here, but the entry level and the building level are kind of artificially created. So it's useful for them. The other thing we didn't see coming, and I warned you about it, we started getting some churches and some places with larger opening spaces that have wood posts rather than sort of structural walls. We thought, great, wood, what could be the problem, right? Wood posts attached to these giant chunks of metal to hold them solid to run all the way down. They're perfectly designed thermal bridges. And so we had to really kind of rework. We went back to Simpson to look at there were other details, went back to the structural engineer. These weren't even in the drawings until late in construction documents. So we had this building, we're right on track, and all of a sudden we find all these huge pieces of metal running through the floor we didn't even know about. The biggest piece that this lesson has taught is that we need to bring structural engineers into that first shred at the beginning of schematic design and start the discussion about what kind of Simpson tie will use, or how many Simpson ties will use, how does this piece come together. The structural engineers look kind of like deer in the headlights because nobody asked them at the schematic design these questions. But most of them can tell you, well, I don't know exactly, but it's going to be a 1 every year. They can give you ballpark numbers that we can work with. So our schematic design, PHPP or WIFI passive models are far more accurate now as a result. And that's the lesson we learned more than anything else. Where we act as the passive house consultant, unless it's a project team we have done multiple passive house with before, like Cornerstone. If it's basically our first go with an architecture group, we will, at this point, pretty much insist on a full day passive house design charrette at the beginning of schematic design. And we will prepare a whoopie bathtub or PHDP model prior to this will come in with a set of recommendation, basis of design decisions, walls, ties, all these pieces, and go through this with structural, with the architects, with mechanical engineers, talk about ventilation, and try to get agreement on as much of this as we can in one day at the beginning. We will usually find there are 2 or 3 things there are fierce disagreements on in the room, but it's awesome to know that at the beginning of schematic design because you have time to have all the cups of coffee and work it out rather than have to do it late. And we usually find there's something that the client freaks out about. What? Condensing dryers? You can't use condensing dryers. We're like, fine. Okay, there's another 20 cups of coffee. So it has been the biggest change in practice over the last decade. I used to kind of hope they would do it. We now pretty much insist. And with new clients on major projects, we won't sign off unless they agree to a full day shred with the beginning of schematic design. Because we find out it just costs another $40,000 of back and forth over the course of the time. It's way cheaper to butt heads right on day one and get cheap and get hard at the beginning, not some later value engineering. So the other thing that happens on these slabs is where you do have, this is the ground floor of that initial building, where you do have a cold down here and a big post. You've got to wrap the post on it too, familiar with that thermal grid. Usually 1.5 meters is usually plenty, 1.5 meters to be the whole thing. You'll also have places here where this is against the sort of split arcade walls. It's cold back there, but it's warm up there. So you have to kind of look at that detail. Now there'll be a concrete layer over all this, so most of this will be invisible in the final building. This project used vinyl windows on the shop front. Most projects now we have Shugo, Ryko, and Love with Kona products. We have more thermally broken aluminum, but at the time we didn't have that, so we're actually using the metal frames on the street level building, reasonably good looking once they're all finished. Just to show the difference, the energy balance on the left is that first project we did. The one on the right is a later project. Look at how much we've decreased the thermal breaching. This is all just better slab detail. The windows and everything else is pretty much. This is the difference we can make by being picky about all those slab details, because the slab is the most thermally conductive thing on these multi-buildings. So, and that is often the difference between expensive assets and cheaper. Just closing that gap. So you can always save money by being finicky and aggressive about understanding all the little penetrations that are happening on the front. How are you going to air seal around your plumbing drains? How many plumbing drains do you have? How many electrical conduits do you have? Electrical plumbing conduits? I mean, all these questions that it's easy to kind of not focus on, but by focusing on right at the beginning, you can manage them better and reduce the total. Sorry. Ventilation. That's specific between these two buildings. This unit has stack mentioned on vendors, and so one boost switch affects 5 buildings, right? This building has a central unit. Before we had any local dampers, the central unit just had to run higher all the time. Basically, the ventilation always ran on boost. Have a boost. That's ventilation is the biggest loss we'll have, and it's where your ventilation design decisions get really expensive and confusing. Every project freaks out at the idea of local dampers like the Rihanna campus, speaking of a mechanical damper, because it's like $1,500 a unit. But then we start saying, okay, here's your impact with additional insulation and other things you have to do to claw down this extra space. $1,500 a unit starts to seem like. So you have to balance these mechanical decisions against slab design and other pieces. All those. Thank you.
Hi. Do you find issues with the first floor being cold, like especially if you're delivering heat from high units that are thermal gravitation?
No, I mean, you've got both passive house systems are extremely aggressive about sort of managing cold ridges, cold corners. So you have much more even air. I mean, it's really noticeable. Spend time and on top of a more consistent thermal enclosure around everything, you have your HRV running gently circulating the air constantly. So the thing that passive house delivers that ultimately all the cellular is fantastic thermal comfort. Like most people are never used to. It is the same temperature as the ceiling and the floor in most units, unless you have a lot of floor. Yeah, it's a kind of comfort that you get weirdly spoiled. Here's the funniest thing. Like cocktail plants from years ago, single family homes. Every time I meet them in a cocktail plant, they're like, oh man, I went to Switzerland to go skiing. It was just horrible. Those houses are so cold. I had to wear a sweater. I had to wear slippers. People get really spoiled. Even in the more
What do you think you per unit for building? No, just the first floor. So obviously, when you're up on anything second floor and up, you have some heat coming through the floor, so it's not going to be cold. But slab on grade, or especially slab over air, like even with all that insulation, it seems like if you're delivering heat up high, that it's only going to kind of get down so far.
The issues I've seen have been more about external gains. So the height on these taller buildings, you're just up in some. But that's a driver for heat stratification in the building.
So another thing this developer did, huge credit to them, is they set aside a room. They set aside a unit they didn't rent. Use it as short-term rental. Later they put it on Airbnb for a while. Almost everybody who thought about doing a multi-unit bathhouse, single-family bathhouse for years with the same unit, they just made it available. A huge give on the part of the developer, but having the ability to take so many people and say, great, we're staying in the bathhouse this weekend. Okay, show up. They ultimately started charging for it because they said, and then it was on Airbnb and they're making so much money. They're like, let's shoot another one. There's no problem. But nothing will help your community growth more than having a house out part of people just go camp and spend a few days in, because it will get them past a lot of these decisions. And huge credit to this developer for this space. It's a big give on their part. I just want to get through a few more problems. So thermal bridging at plumbing vents, it's not that big a deal on a single family house, but when you design these big flat multi-unit things, you can easily have 60 or 80 plumbing vents. It's a whole bunch of thermal bridging running through the building. So the typical design, all these stacks, all these vertical runs. So correctly calculating this and figuring these loss has been a real topic of debate, certainly in the PHI community, I assume within the PS community too. We revised the calculator several times, but conservatively, they can be, and this is 3 specific buildings we're looking at, but those plumbing stacks alone are between 7 and 12% of the total plumbing. So insulating those, managing those, bringing those together with something, again, it's the kind of detail you don't think about until you're starting to really peel the onion back and say, what's the cheapest way to make this building more effective? Insulating the plumbing back vents, which can be as simple as this. It doesn't have to be really complicated, but you have to allow some space in the walls to insulate them. Yeah.
Can't you combine them inside the envelope?
Not when you have a 6-story building that's already a height limit. Where do you combine them? There's no place to pull them together. If you had an attic, if you could have a free floor with no apartments in it, sure. But all these buildings are maxed out heights out to the edges of the development. The PHI has revised twice in the last 2 years, mostly working with us, the way we calculate things. If you can do air tension styles, it's a great thing to start talking to your plumbing inspectors and plumbing code people now, because it's going to take forever.
I don't think you can do it here. Not at all. Not at all.
We couldn't do it at all, and now we can sometimes do it under some circumstances. After literally 10 years of going back again and again and again and again. Yes, it's a discussion about that. Problem 3, ventilation space planning. In all of these multi-unit wood frame buildings, in Vancouver, it's the value of an interior square foot is $3,000 a foot. Nobody wants to think about the planning. And so finding the space for the HRVs, finding the space for the ducts, really hard. In this building, and we have these sort of thin vertical chases, and the HRVs are right below a doghouse on the roof that allow for ventilation. Here are the HRVs, on that uppermost floor. The biggest mistake we made on this building was would show the run, but it wasn't instantly clear where it was. 1's energy, 2's energy, 3's energy. We didn't always allow enough space. So late in the process, we had to go back and kind of build some more drops to accommodate the ventilation space. This was not popular with the schedule, with the cost, with anybody. There are a lot of fingers pointing about
this space on the coordination. But we're certainly extremely careful going forward now to make sure we have ventilation space also. This shows some of the drop from heavy fires.
Will make it easy to go listen to.
In the hallway, it's all metal. Once you cross through the fire smoke damper, we have to smoke damper both fire dampers into the unit. All of the hallways.
Under now only throws and do a list.
And then the final thing, so you can't go any higher because you're up against your height limit. You can't have any more space in the unit because you've taken out every square foot you can possibly have. And the developer promised the city so many parking units, to make this whole thing work. Where are you going to put your? This was the toughest one we ever had. Months after negotiation, this building is both a church and the building literally sits there, parkade. So we wanted to put, services down here. Let's go backwards. Where? Like, we could not give up a parking space. The deal was off. They already had this huge negotiation. And so, again, we went through this kind of Tetris of trying to play, and why is your past house consult up at midnight with the architect playing Tetris on a table to try to figure out where you can put an HRV? Not great. So here's working through this several times brought us back to this view of this early schematic stage charrette. And to some degree, even though we're a very enclosure first company, past us enclosure first focus, the first thing we do in this building after we have the basic box model is where's the main mechanical go? Now we'll design it. But we now push that those mechanical decisions in the very first discussion for this space. So that helped make us popular with mechanical engineers when they realized, we're trying to design elegant mechanical spaces.
Well, also say one thing Vancouver did, which maybe you look to, you get extra floor area for your ventilation system. So we have a floor area ratio. We're only based on the size of the lot. You're only allowed to build so much conditioned space. You get extra if you're providing passive house specifically for the ventilation system.
We have a thick wall reduction and a ventilation space reduction, and in some zones up to 5% extra floor space for certified cost. We don't get $3,000 a unit.
But that's what. At 3,000 a square foot.
But it's taken us a long time to get there. And then problem 4 was just, some of these assemblies, this wall I've been showing you is very labor intensive. Have the advantage the labor is inside out of the rain, but it's a lot of labor to put all of these pieces together as building after building. More of our buildings are going this approach, like we showed in the first development. I would say certainly more than half, maybe 3/4 of projects are now. Conventional wood frame, exterior rock wall 6 or 9 inches, depending on the soil. Up north, we have a project that's 12 inches exterior rock wall on long rooms. Range of other windows. The rock wall is fairly easy to over-insulate window frames. So this has become sort of our go-to approach on more buildings. The exception is if you have difficulty accessing the building from the outside because of power lines or some other access problem, something like the first wall starts to look at. But if you have reasonable good access to the outside, this approach works. On your firewall, if this is mass timber, this is rock wall, everything comes through metal, metal hat truck and metal screw, it can actually be a firewall on top.
Sorry to ask a question that's probably the builder training thing, but how do you deal with fixing windows after they're over insulated? If you ever needed to remove that window?
Probably. In most of these cases, if you had to take out the frame, obviously it's inoperable, and you probably just take out. If you had to take the whole thing in, you probably take it into the inside. You probably remove this from this way. But because of the nature of it, even if you had to cut this out with a knife to put some more rock wool in, it's not that hard.
This one's got a clip right here. So most of us are bigger, so kind of got to be inside anyway. And hey, warm and cozy. I don't know.
That's a fair question. There are some other balcony details and other details that have changed. As we move to more panelized buildings and mass timber buildings, we're looking more at hanging balconies and less at cantilever balconies.
but we're now doing north to balcony with 2 composite wood members coming out underneath the floor, and the balcony spreads across that. So not a thermal bridge every 16 inches, one on each end. So just to recap, thermal bridges and suspended slabs with one marquee can have quickly, really quickly, especially in your seismic zone. Paying tremendously close attention to those from the start really helps, and involving your structural people from the earliest meeting. Thermal bridging from plumbing vents and other plumbing systems, mechanical, electric systems adds up because these are big flat buildings. If you had a cube building or a tall skinny building, it wouldn't be the same. But when you have big flat buildings with parkades below and you're at the peak of how high you can build, you find you have a lot of thermal bridges. Having worked with those matters. It's difficult to squeeze ventilation equipment in buildings, and you just have to plan. And this building, like the other one we talked about, is overheating. This is from another presentation I did this morning. Again, we've changed the way we approach heating. We are doing hourly models on worst case suites and future climates. Look really carefully. We also adjust internal heat gains away from the past house requirements up to various ASHRAE requirements and even increased requirements. One of the cases in this building that taught us a huge lesson, we were walking into the building really, we're told this one suite had real bad overheating problems, like consistently. So this is the worst suite. You gotta come see this, you gotta come see this, you got permission. You let us in. It's a nice 2-bedroom suite, really tastefully, elegantly put. There's a couple that lived there. The second bedroom was like this giant gaming den. It had 6 massive computers and 8 screens running 24/7, and they played those like interactive video games. That was their hobby. And they had a his and hers video game seat in this thing. And I looked in there. I kind of looked around like, this is approximately 2,400 watts running 24/7. I think I found the problem with the overheating. But at the other hand, who might say like, they seem like really nice people. They're happy. They enjoy what they're doing. They've got an apartment. They have the extra room. That's their fun room, what they want to do. But there's nothing wrong with what they're doing. We just have to consider the possibility that internal heat gains vary widely. Imagine if you had the Buddhist monk living next door. We're like, that's nothing but a map. Sorry? We have to design buildings that are capable of operating over a very broad set of circumstances in an extremely changing climate, often with extremely variable highs and lows. Winter lows that are colder than we were planned for, summer highs that are hotter than we were planned for, smoke in the sky, flooding. We have to consider all these issues. And again, I think Pat's House is a great bench from which to approach those problems because it gives you a baseline performance. It is not the solution to all the problems in the internet itself.
Right. Thank you all for listening to us for a good long time. Just sprint to finish here. So
before you jump off of that, because that's probably the most applicable to what we build out here, which is a double-wide corridor scenario. What's your HVAC application in that building?
In most of the buildings we're doing now, depending on the size of the building, we're either doing DRF systems with single heads per apartment or 4-5 systems with small fan buildings per apartment. And we're doing more and more centralized HRV systems. We are experimenting on 3 projects concurrently. I wish we were doing sort of with doing the heating and cooling via the Swigan delivery systems. And what we've done is we've oversized the boost mode. The systems can scale down to a regular Pat's House rate, but they can boost even higher, allowing us to deliver more cooling in the summer. But again, we don't have the dehumidification mode we do. I don't think you could do that in this climate. In our Ontario projects, they've all got VRF systems, and we're worried about the climate contributions of the gases, and so we're working closely to look at sort of what alternative gases are coming to VRF quickly. But at the moment, we don't see anything that's more efficient and more cost-effective than good multi-spoke systems. And it's the other funny one that's hit us is we've been working hard on several buildings to develop more effective 4-pipe systems, narrower pipes, more precise delivery, smaller fan flow units. And then we got to our mass timber projects. Again, what's the #1 fear of a mass timber project? A slow leak you don't know about. So we're thinking twice about running lots and lots of water lines through a mass timber project. We're assuming on all our mass timber projects that we're going to have pressure sensors and alarms on plumbing systems. So if there's any drop in plumbing pressure, an alarm goes off to the kind of central panel right away. So, you know, it's not going to rot in a day. It's going to rot in months and months and months, if not months. Sorry, that's probably more than you want. Happy to talk about it.
All right, so just quickly go through the last couple of projects. This is the same builder, Cascade Built, different architect. It's very, very, you know, this is just what Monty was saying. It's the typology we're seeing these buildings. This is a 5/1 commercial and access to the parking garage, low 5 levels of units. So this one has an elevator. The elevator is outside of the building. And again, it has this exterior, again, Seattle, it's got the main entrance is an exterior stair tower with an elevator. And the entrance door is just beyond that.
And you can do that in Seattle's climate. As you get to a little north of Vancouver, you can't do it anymore because your elevator manufacturer will require you to keep the elevator heated to a certain degree. So have a thing outside the unit that you've got to heat to keep the elevator running.
Yeah.
And so it works up to about Seattle, Vancouver, and then it doesn't work further north. Probably doesn't work here.
But this one has an even higher walk score. It's a walk in paradise. It's right in the middle. Just moments. It's right in the heart. It's 5 wood over 1 PC deck. Podium.
How much parking are they requiring with this?
This one was designed under a higher code. This is also market rate. Market rate. Not all of them, in fact, not all of them, but this is also the 1 and 2 bedrooms. How many they want because there's no street parking.
But 1-to-1?
No, it's not 1-to-1. They don't have 45 units. I forget. 25, 30. So, it's not mandatory. It's not mandatory, but the developer is like, it's actually just heard there's a tower in Seattle that's having problems selling its units because there's no. So it's rental. Oh, but no, it's not rental. Oh, it's condos. Oh, it's not condos. It's back to rental. So this development cycle is long. It informed a number of things, back and forth, some changes. It was passive house and it wasn't passive house when it was condo. Oh, but then it went, we went back to passive house and then so challenge. Just call it a challenge. It happens all the time, right? It is used to. But it informs some aspects. This is the project last fall, and here it is today, or earlier this week. So TCO is going to be mid-March, late March. So they're doing the last details, getting the scaffolding down. So it's it's pretty typical, right? There's so the project, the Icon Architecture project, this past fall presentation, a lot of super details. It's got the insulation above the podium, same way. This one that had they wanted the gypcrete everywhere, so they just put it down and gypcrete on it and put fixtures in. Fairly simple, fairly straightforward, and doable. Of course, it's market rate, so they're not fighting as much for the ceiling space because they wanted slightly more generous on floor to floor, or ceiling heights. So this one has 8'9" ceiling heights, so a little more in the corridor to get all this mess. So there's 5 floors, 9 units per floor. Studios, 2 bedrooms, various ventilations. There's 1 ventilator per floor, but 1 tower that delivers it to the roof for supply and stuff. Actually, it was one of the biggest design challenges. Where's the intake go? Because they had to design around a grease hood for the restaurant out there where the intake goes. Watch out for the access panel. Hard metal. These are the #1 killers of systems ultimately balancing at the end of the day. We're really backing against that and see it from the these custom-made access are the #1 problem as large building. Sorry,
You leapt out at me.
So, and this is not a terrifically efficient ERV, you know, but again, the form is so good on these buildings and the energy, the balance on this building. The wall system on this building is a not even that advanced screen 2x6 and 2x8 combination with some faulty stuff. The internal gains on this project are tremendous. They put good glass in it. They minimized the glass. You'll see there's one wall where there is none. That's so it's a building property. So it's at a good window to wall ratio. Add it all up, the walls aren't doing a heck of a lot of work. And so the roof is doing plenty of work, the windows doing good work, but you didn't even need a terrifically efficient ventilation system. Here we are earlier this week, so getting ready to hand over keys to the property owner. The TI work is just starting down below. But fairly straightforward. Some of the biggest challenges were what to do the transitions across the podium, and they just went round and round and round. And there's a tremendous number of penetrations, and how are they going to seal them? So their final the solution they came up with in the end was the Hilti. They worked with the prior Hilti, and Hilti has a slow expanding foam that they just built them. And there was $3,000 worth of slow expanding foam, but it did the ticket. So then the last big leak, of course, is these exterior doors. And there are only 5 doors to the hallway, and there's one door at the back stairwell and one at the top, but 20 other units have doors also. But even with that, 1,000 CFM at 60, it's 60 pascals. Like that's one type of 0.02 CFM per square foot. 50 pascal. That was a preliminary. We're working on these doors and over.
But you found typically get better.
It generally gets worse. But maybe not, because it was actually that north stairwell that actually had the mask. So but once, this is Scott, he's the PM, he's so happy this day. Like everybody all, they're like, oh, okay, we're gonna do this. Everybody's ready to work for 4 hours finding routes. We fired it up. Once they realized that one window was open, they closed that window, they got that number. Scott Lewis was just like, oh, we went back to work. Like literally, it took 5 minutes of the day. So this is the same GC, and this is another project going up currently in Queen Anne, near downtown. There's Lock Squares up in the same view. So Cascade Belt is doing a lot of tremendous work in delivering buildings in Seattle, and they're bringing all these architects in and saying, "This is what I'm doing. Come on, let's do it." So it's pretty nice. This is it yesterday. This morning. So there's that podium. There's a framing going up. One suggestion, actually, we have very high seismic concerns, but we've moved all the shear to interior walls. So this is purely sheeted roof wall, no glass, no plywood, no nothing. It's all inside. Makes the drying out the building a lot easier. Makes a much better substrate for our air barrier. Both of these use a fully fluidified system, and then all the shears on the inside and all those fold downs and all that stuff is outside of the exterior walls. So we can actually get effective insulation. So yeah, a good. They're even doing it in non-plastic.
May I just ask if some of the shears dealt with tension diagonals, or are you using
it's all male. So the diagonals
They're
don't do it.
small enough units. If you had an office space or large space, you have to.
We all the big steel.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Or no.
We do a lot of hold downs. We have to bolt the roof to that podium all the way. So continuous tension. In those. So just quickly going through what's happening. I'm super excited to hear what y'all are doing here. So a few things coming up from the West Coast. Oregon is ditching single family zoning. Any municipality with 10,000 residents, you can no longer have a single family zone. What that means is up to the jurisdiction, but Portland has said there's duplex, triplex, quadplex for all single family, what was single family in the entire city. So there's going to be a tremendous increase in these smaller multifamilies. And then they've also have some of the other areas. They've also created Portland the Clean Energy Fund. Anybody heard about this one? They're taxing any corporation that is in the city of Portland that makes over $500 million a year. That's a 1% tax in profit. $50 million a year. That's going straight to a clean energy fund. And they don't know what to do with that resource. That is a good question. Who's selected? Yeah, I don't, like, it passed. And everybody's like, whoa. So there's all these commissions, et cetera, and some of our colleagues, past colleagues, are on the committees. So once they sort out what's going on, there's going to be a lot of money to do this type of stuff. Washington State has something interesting. So the affordable housing community has, the governor is specifically concerned about this. He's created the ultra high energy efficiency demonstration program. So if you are doing something with state tax credits for affordable housing, you can now apply for additional funding to go to pass. And you do a baseline building, you do a baseline cost, premium, you apply for that. So we have $7 million to spend over the next 2 years. 2.4 is dedicated. Hopefully you get another 100. You got and we got a few projects from that, including this one. So this is one I'm on. So there's a day center, clinic, and then 100. So this is non-Pascal's. This is Pascal's portion. This has 92 units, studio units that has been installed on the strips. It's a cool project. It's going to be a challenge. It came in the door design. And so we were not able to have that show. No one did all these parts and pieces. But 92 studio units, housing first, and that is the north building currently. The other one will start construction in April. Very exciting stuff, especially for that. All right, I'm going to do this quick. It's been a long night. We tried to show you mostly projects we finished and learned from. I just want to show you some of the things that we worked on. This is under construction now. It's 220 room dorm in a fairly cold climate. This might be one of our first projects that comes in completely on schedule. Very, very close. This is a much larger dorm. Both of those buildings are passive house, and this dining hall set 1,000 plates per meal for students. The heat gains from the industrial kitchen of that size dwarf the entire rest of the project. The question is kind of what to do with it. We've learned an awful lot about managing kitchens. We hope to bring forward into the future restaurant. This is another project in Vancouver. This is all modular, like that first building we showed you with all of them. And it's an attempt to create a higher, more dense modular prototype. Again, I'll pass that. This is our first of several projects that is mass timber, all electric passive. So this is an attempt to actually not only mass timber facade, mass timber structure, mass timber vertically, mass timber modularized. They're actually creating a cassette between floors and ceilings and units where a bunch of the mechanical will be pre-prepared on one of the CLT panels, kind of like a big circuit board. And then plug pieces into it. Is it a coordination nightmare? Yes. Is it years behind schedule? Yes. But it's cool.
You work on those after.
This we think is the future curtain wall on these buildings. We have a mass timber panel, some kind of connection, a thinner mass timber piece here, allowing us to stream rock wool in from the outside, mount windows in from the outside, and it's not this, but a more beefed up piece to actually hang a balcony, a glass door in this panel, additional structural pieces, all prefab. It has an ability to flex this way, about 3/4 of an inch, through seismic, and of course, no building static. The floor is always moving like this. If we join at the corner,
size of the building can flex on a wind load for different situations through a variety of chicken hood type adjustment. There'll be an air seal here and here, and then this is rigid rock wool and this is flexible. It's going to be like interior rock wool.
What are those skills? After the time.
It's the exact same system we do on the underside curtain wall. They can last for years and years. This, just actually threw these slides in late. This is a mass timber, pastels all electric building downtown. It's also very, very small suite. This is former homeless housing, and the tenant on the ground floor is a large sort of gay, lesbian, trans community center. It's a really interesting project that has challenged everything you know about design. Working out those panel systems for this building, and there'll be 3 other buildings that use the same panel system. So the buildings have different shapes. Panel design helps become replicable. When you do mass timber, you have to close them quickly. You can't sit out there in the rain for 2 years. And so when you do mass timber, you're taking yourself down elevation. It's just part of the process. And then we have 3 relatively tall buildings. High View is intended to be a living building challenge as well as passive house. It's a fairly aggressive project with retail in the ground floor, probably a restaurant. And the idea is to recover some of the heat from the restaurant and market into the entire building process. It's written about quite a bit locally. 1460 Alberni is a different approach. These are both passive house towers. These are being designed by Robert A. Stern in New York. Nothing quite like having an 80-year-old architect in New York and a 29-year-old Chinese billionaire as the developer. To understand how the world can be a little different in different places. But looking for a traditional, very high-end condo project. 48 stories when it's done. They've done excavation and started concrete work on that. And then this one, 1075 Nelson, will be 60 stories. Mass house luxury condos all the way up with these little sort of sky gardens, a little in between. This is affordable housing up to there, to the balcony pool, which you won't get to.
So another thing that Vancouver's done, which is fantastic, but there's such density downtown that they have said, if you are building downtown, you need to do it. Or they have the PC step code, which essentially the same thing. But you can't build a tower downtown.
These two projects, and this is something any community could do, because they were actually permitted early on. There are only so many sites you can hit this height. And so if you go to the chief planner for several years, and said, well, I want to do 60 stories. This will be the tallest building in Vancouver. So the planner said, great, you get an international architect, and it has to be a fast one. And the developer, who knows what neither of that cost them. Fine, no problem, I can do that. The really fun gift it's given us at RPH in Vancouver is we are now teaching passive house to New York architects and London-based architects because they're working all around the world, but we're the first place they had to do a passive house. And this guy, Tom Wright from WKK, he did the Burj Al Arab with its sail-like buildings. He totally got into it. Why didn't he tell me that? He's like taking his family on vacations to St. Pasto's around the world. He's like just totally in. You know, it's one of those things that really smart, really creative people in our industry, when they get it, they're like, oh, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. So I'm hoping maybe we can infect the world a little more broadly. This is a schematic. There's a lot more detail. This is the panel design proposal for this building. It has these brushed metal bands, and then there are opaque sections with glass cladding surrounded by actual windows in fully thermally insulated boxes with over insulation. Again, you can see most of the rock wall. Now we often build buildings that are like faux shaker buildings or faux craftsman buildings. This is the worst faux curtain wall building. We entered in a new age of retro. We can add some insulation behind these walls, you know, as we back frame a little bit. But notice how thick the insulation is over the slab. That gives us a heck of a lot of protection from loss of the slab. So we're trying to take advantage of Tom's design idea of these bands and use it to a certain extent together. It also gives us the ability for a lot of flex. You know, big concrete buildings are doing this all the time. You really track them. They're not solid at all. They're moving constantly. So this here allows this building to flex pretty regularly while remaining airtight, which is the unique challenge. We talked earlier.
On that.
Sorry?
What is the air barrier on that? Excuse.
It'll be down the sheathing through the concrete, and then there'll be a flexible membrane over the top. Again, we've seen the past house construction premium drop. This was one of the more recent buildings we costed. This was 6-story wood, and about 2% premium versus about 5% premium. Just
You can, is that percentage change for the contractor doing this for the first, second, third, fourth time?
A little bit. The bigger change is, are the architects really on board with glazing area, with simplifying mechanical floors, with shortening your duct lengths, with all those little design things? That makes a bigger difference. The contractor, if you stay on them, you can kind of get any contractors really. If the architects aren't focused on minimizing all those measures, this building is kind of a master. It actually repeats over and over. It looks like a lot of glazing for this side, but it's right less on the back side. It's not changed a little bit.
I would slightly agree that, absolutely the design has much more effect on the budget than anything else. But certain contractors are going to panic and put a budget on it that others wouldn't pay. And a certain PM, certain site supers, certain trades workers are going to really understand.
And the truth is, our construction costs are rising so much that nobody knows anything about construction right now. This final piece is, a recent study by the Vancouver Economic Commission saw just the value of building products, windows, insulation, the kind of things we've been talking about here, are adding $3.2 billion to our regional economy. What we are doing has the ability to fantastically stimulate out beyond our buildings, and that's an important part of our message every time we talk publicly and share. Yeah, we're just building these little past house buildings, but as we change the supply chain, we think we're way ahead in British Columbia because we are making windows we're already exporting to you. But you don't have to let us keep that advantage. You can take that back as you take on your own manufacturing. I'll skip this for now because we're running out of time. You're welcome to email either one of us with all questions. We'll stay around, talk some more here. I want to just really thank you and encourage you. I genuinely wish when we started on these buildings, we had the kind of incentive, the kind of experience, and the kind of approach so many of you were taking. And I think you're really going to change Massachusetts in a fantastic way. You're fun to watch.